The Southwest flight landed at Sacramento International Airport, and Ryan Carter reached for his phone. "Hey, honey," he said cheerfully. "I'm back from San Diego. The plane just landed. I'll be home in about an hour. Love you." With a smile, he slid the phone back into his pocket, relieved to be heading home. As Ryan drove along I-80 toward Fair Oaks, he reflected on how much he disliked business travel. Though his trips were infrequent, each one felt like an unwelcome disruption, 2 or 3 nights away from home, stuck in hotels and meetings. His boss, Helen Sanders, hated travel even more, so Ryan often ended up representing their Sacramento office on quarterly visits south. He grumbled to himself, but there was little he could do about it. His thoughts soon shifted to Emily. He hoped she might finally be ready to start a family. Her freelance art business seemed to be thriving, and Ryan felt that working from home would make balancing motherhood easier. Humming along to a classic rock tune on the radio, he allowed himself to imagine a future filled with the pitter-patter of tiny feet. When Ryan pulled into the driveway, a flicker of annoyance crossed his face. The garage door opener wasn't working. After several failed attempts, he parked on the street and walked to the front door, only to find that his key didn't fit the lock. Bewildered, he tried again, but nothing worked. "Hey, it's me," he called out, knocking. "Something's wrong with the lock. Can you open up?" Silence. He knocked harder, pressing his ear to the door. Finally, Emily's voice came from inside, cold and unyielding. "I changed all the locks in the garage code," she said flatly. "What?" Ryan asked, stunned. "Why? Let me in." "No," she replied. "You don't live here anymore." Confused and alarmed, Ryan protested. "What are you talking about? This is my home." Before Emily could respond, Ryan heard footsteps behind him. Turning, he saw a man in a baseball cap approaching with an envelope. "Ryan Carter?" the man asked. "Yes," Ryan answered. The man handed him the envelope. "You've been served," he said curtly. Ryan tore open the envelope, his eyes scanning the papers. A divorce petition, accompanied by a restraining order, prohibited him from coming within 200 yards of Emily. Stunned, he pounded on the door. "Emily, we need to talk." Moments later, a police officer arrived, his hand resting on his holster. The man in the baseball cap explained the restraining order, and the officer turned to Ryan. "Sir, you need to leave now. If you don't, I'll have to arrest you." Humiliated and dazed, Ryan nodded. Under the watchful eyes of his neighbors, who were peeking through curtains and windows, he walked to his car and drove away. Inside the house, Emily exhaled and leaned against the door. A triumphant smile crept across her lips. "I did it," she thought. He never saw it coming. The next morning, Ryan woke in a dingy motel room, exhausted and confused. He couldn't understand why Emily had taken such drastic steps. Though he replayed their recent interactions, nothing stood out. No arguments, no tension, no sign that anything was wrong. At least he had his shaving kit, but beyond that, his options were grim. His clothes were dirty or wrinkled, and thanks to the restraining order, he couldn't return home to retrieve more. Worse, it was clear he'd need a lawyer just to sort through this mess. Hungry from skipping dinner, Ryan found a nearby fast food restaurant and ate a quick breakfast while jotting down a to-do list. At the top, calling Helen Sanders, his micromanaging boss. When he called, Ryan hoped to leave a voicemail, but Helen picked up on the second ring. He tried to excuse his absence with a vague mention of being under the weather, but Helen pressed for details. Reluctantly, he explained the situation. "You must have done something to provoke her," Helen said bluntly. She eventually agreed to let him take the day off, but warned him to return the next day properly dressed. After the awkward call, Ryan began searching for a lawyer. Most large firms didn't handle family law, and the smaller ones he contacted were booked for weeks. Finally, he found a modest firm, Victor Bennett and Associates, that could see him that afternoon. While he was relieved, he couldn't help but wonder why they weren't busier. Before his appointment, Ryan checked his bank account. His paycheck had been deposited, but to his horror, the joint account he shared with Emily had been drained to just $1. Furious, he added this to his growing list of grievances. He bought some office-appropriate clothes at Target and, on impulse, drove past his house. It looked eerily quiet, So he returned to the motel for a lonely lunch. That afternoon, Ryan arrived at the downtown office of Victor Bennett. The building was old, its sign weathered with age, and the firm itself seemed modest. Ryan was ushered into a small office where Victor Bennett, a sharp-eyed lawyer in his 60s, greeted him. Ryan explained his situation, handing over the divorce papers and restraining order. Bennett reviewed the documents carefully, nodding occasionally. "What are you hoping for here?" he asked. "Can you get the restraining order lifted?" Ryan replied, "If I could just talk to Emily, maybe I could fix this." Bennett leaned back, his expression measured. "In California, you can't stop a divorce if the other party wants one. Your wife's actions, changing the locks, filing the restraining order, draining the joint account, make it clear she doesn't want to negotiate. She's been planning this for a while." "How can you tell?" Ryan asked, his voice cracking. "Getting a restraining order isn't quick or simple," Bennett explained. "She hired an attorney, drafted the motion, got it signed by a judge, and changed the locks. None of this was spur of the moment." Ryan slumped in his chair. "She never gave me a single hint anything was wrong," he muttered. "She even told me she loved me when I called her from the airport," Ryan said, shaking his head in disbelief. Victor Bennett remained silent, his expression neutral. Finally, Ryan sighed. "I guess I'll get a divorce then. But why would she do this without even talking to me?" "I can't answer that," Bennett replied, "but I can refer you to a detective agency. They're efficient, reasonably priced, and located in this building. Shall I contact them for you?" "Yes," Ryan said, nodding. "I need to know what's going on." Bennett made a quick call, and within minutes, the receptionist informed Ryan that the agency's lead investigator, Ethan Bennett, could see him. Half an hour later, Ryan stood outside an office labeled Sacramento Confidential Investigations. A middle-aged man in a tracksuit greeted him. "I'm Ethan Bennett, head of this division," he said, shaking Ryan's hand. "Are you related to Victor Bennett?" Ryan asked. "Yes," Ethan replied with a grin. "He's my brother. I used to work as a detective in San Francisco before starting this agency. Let's talk about your case." Ryan explained his situation. "Victor says I can't stop the divorce, but I need to know why she's doing this. It's humiliating, and I feel blindsided." Ethan nodded. "I get it. That protective order? It's likely a tactic to control the narrative, making you look like the bad guy. Assuming, of course, you've never harmed her." "Never," Ryan said firmly. "Then this is her way of framing you," Ethan said. "When people ask about the divorce, she'll mention the restraining order. Your reputation will take the hit, and she won't have to say much else." Ryan clenched his fists. "I can't believe she'd stoop so low." "She's planned this carefully," Ethan replied. "Give me a week, and I'll get to the bottom of it." "That would be great," Ryan said, shaking his hand. For the rest of the day, Ryan followed Victor's advice to protect his finances. The next morning, he returned to work, where his boss, Helen Sanders, greeted him with a frosty glare. "Mr. Carter," she said, arms crossed, "you've accumulated a significant backlog. I expect you to address it immediately." Ryan nodded and hurried to his cubicle. Skipping lunch, he worked diligently to catch up, but his focus dissolved when Ethan called late that evening. "We've caught a lucky break," Ethan said. "Our researcher found something interesting. Can you stop by tomorrow?" "Can't you just tell me now?" Ryan asked, frustrated. "It's our policy to present findings in person," Ethan replied. "Fine," Ryan said reluctantly. "I'll try to get away. If not, I'll come first thing in the morning." The next day, Ryan approached Helen. "I need to take tomorrow off," he said. "You can't just leave whenever you feel like it," Helen snapped. "If you take tomorrow off, it will count against your vacation days." "Yes, ma'am," Ryan muttered. Losing a vacation day was the least of his worries. The following morning, Ryan walked into Ethan's office, where the detective greeted him enthusiastically. "We've hit the jackpot. Come on in." Ethan played a video on his monitor, showing a fisheye image of Ryan's house. A sleek silver BMW i8 pulled into the driveway and entered the garage. "That was last night at 8:51 p.m., Ethan explained. "That's not your wife's car, is it?" "No," Ryan replied, his stomach churning. "She had a guest." "Exactly," Ethan said. And whoever it is has the new garage code. The next clip showed the same car leaving the garage at 1:32 p.m. the following afternoon. It didn't take her long to move on, Ryan muttered bitterly. Ethan played another clip, this one from 3 weeks earlier. This guy's been visiting regularly, 2 or 3 times a week for the past 6 months. How did you get this footage? Ryan asked. Your neighbor's motion-activated cameras, Ethan said. They store everything in the cloud. Some use it to catch porch pirates. Others catch situations like this. Ethan zoomed in on the car's license plate. Here's the best part. I've got a DMV contact. Moments later, a driver's license photo appeared on the screen. John Spencer, Ethan said. Does that name ring a bell? Ryan's jaw tightened. Emily works at his ad agency. That must be how they met. He stood abruptly. I'm going to confront him. Wait, Ethan said, grabbing Ryan's wrist. This is why I present findings in person. Sit down before you do something reckless. Ryan hesitated, but returned to his seat, glaring. If you confront him, you could end up proving her case for the restraining order, Ethan warned. Your reputation is already fragile. Don't make it worse. Ryan sighed, lowering his head. I'm not a fighter. If I confronted him, I'd probably lose. And Emily? She'd love the idea of 2 men fighting over her. But I can't just let them get away with this. I understand your frustration, Ethan said. But there are smarter ways to handle this. Like what? Ryan asked, skeptical. I've been talking with our IT expert, Ivy Morgan. She knows social media inside out and has some ideas. I'm not sure about this, Ryan replied hesitantly. She's just down the hall. It won't cost you anything to hear her out, Ethan said. Reluctantly, Ryan followed Ethan to a door labeled Antisocial Network. Ignore that, Ethan said with a chuckle. It's her sense of humor. Inside, the room was cluttered, with monitors on a battered desk and posters covering the walls. A tall, slender woman with white hair and gothic makeup looked up and grinned. I'm Ivy Morgan, she said, shaking Ryan's hand. You must be the cheatie. The what? Ryan asked, startled. If your wife's cheating, that makes you the cheatie, Ivy explained with a smirk. Behave, Ivy, Ethan interjected. Just hear her out, he told Ryan before leaving the room. Ivy gestured for Ryan to sit on a futon. Let's talk, she said. Tell me everything, Ivy said, sitting down and crossing her legs. Her sharp eyes focused intently on Ryan, signaling she was ready to listen. Ryan hesitated for a moment, but began recounting his situation, starting with his shock at Emily's sudden actions. Ivy listened attentively, occasionally jotting notes. When he finished, she leaned back and said, I usually don't take cases like this, but I hate cheaters. My dad filled me in. Wait, Ethan is your dad? Ryan interrupted, startled. Yep, Ivy replied with a grin. And Victor is my uncle. It's a family business. That's surprising, Ryan admitted. Small world, Ivy said. Now, I hear your ex has you cornered, and to shift the situation, I need details. What she did, what you did, and how you feel about it. Be honest, it all matters. Ryan hesitated. I'm not sure how a computer expert can help. No offense. None taken, Ivy said, unbothered. I manage social media reputations. That's what you need. Right now, Emily controls the narrative, but if we can turn public perception in your favor, she loses power. How would that even work? Ryan asked, frowning. I don't use social media. Exactly why you're the perfect candidate, Ivy replied with a grin. The world is online all the time. It's where people get news, connect with others, and form opinions. If we tap into that audience and share your story in the right way, we can shift the tide. Ryan rubbed his temples. It all sounds so abstract. Can this really make a difference? Trust me, Ivy said. But first, I need you to tell me your story again. This time, focus on how you felt. People connect with emotions, not just facts. Though reluctant, Ryan recounted his experience from an emotional perspective. His initial excitement to return home, his confusion and anger at being locked out, the humiliation of being served in front of neighbors, and the despair that followed. Ivy listened intently, asking clarifying questions and scribbling notes. When he finished, She looked up and said, "Now let's get to work. I have a plan, but first, Ryan, I need to ask, how strong are you?" "You mean physically?" Ryan asked, puzzled. "No," Ivy replied. "I mean emotionally. How well do you handle criticism and public opinion?" Ryan shifted uncomfortably. "I guess I'm as strong as anyone else." Ivy smirked. "We'll find out. Here's the deal. Every good story has an arc. The hero starts strong, faces a downfall, hits rock bottom, and then rises again. We need to show you're suffering to gain support." "I still don't get it." "I'm already suffering," Ryan said, exasperated. "I know," Ivy said softly, "but we need to make people see it. Be ready to act quickly. I'll call you when it's time. If it's during work, my boss will explode, but I'll manage," Ryan replied. "Perfect," Ivy said, shaking his hand firmly. "I hate cheaters, and I'm going to make sure you get a chance to fight back." As Ryan left, a mix of apprehension and hope swirled in his chest. What have I gotten myself into? The next day, Ivy called during his lunch break. "Can you pick me up? We've got an opportunity." "My boss will hate me," Ryan replied, already grabbing his keys. "But I'll be there in 20 minutes. Miss Sanders reluctantly approved his absence but warned, "This will count against your vacation time." When Ryan arrived at the Bennett building, Ivy was waiting outside, a camera bag slung over her shoulder. "Nice outfit," Ryan joked, noticing her black hoodie and jeans. "Not the time," she said briskly. "We're going to your house." "I can't go there with Emily home," Ryan protested. "She's not. My dad confirmed she left earlier, and he's keeping an eye out," Ivy reassured him. "Are we breaking in?" Ryan asked nervously. "No. We're recreating what happened when you got home," Ivy explained. "And you're doing what?" Ryan asked skeptically. "Filming," Ivy replied. "Why?" "Because your story needs a backstory. Your future fans need to understand what happened." "Fans?" "I don't have fans," Ryan said, baffled. "Not yet," Ivy replied with a sly grin. "Now, tell me how you felt that day. Everything from excitement to shock." Ryan recounted his emotions, and Ivy nodded. "Perfect. When we get there, walk through every step and relive the moment. Don't act, just remember and repeat." When they arrived at Ryan's neighborhood, Ivy handed him a Bluetooth earpiece. "I'll guide you from here," she said, setting up her camera. As Ryan approached the house, memories of that day flooded back, souring his mood. "Try to open the door," Ivy instructed through the earpiece. Ryan fumbled with the lock, frustration bubbling up. "Ring the doorbell," Ivy prompted. Ryan pressed it, recalling the rising anger he'd felt. "Now knock hard, like you did before," she said. He rapped on the door sharply, emotions stirring. "Emily yells from inside that she's changed the locks and wants a divorce," Ivy narrated. Ryan staggered back, the memory of her venomous words hitting him like a slap. "Now the bailiff arrives," Ivy said. Ryan turned as Ethan, playing the role, approached and handed him papers. "Stare at them like they're a death sentence," Ivy instructed. Ryan stared, his jaw tightening as he relived the shock of that day. "The cop is telling you to leave," Ivy continued. Ryan turned away from the door, imagining the officer's stern warning. Without further prompting, he sighed deeply, dropped his hands, and trudged back to his car. His legs felt heavy, and his world seemed shattered all over again. "Get in the car," Ivy reminded him. He slid into the driver's seat, drained. "You were amazing," Ivy said, climbing into the passenger seat. "I got some great footage." Ryan started the engine. "But there wasn't a cop," he said hesitantly. "We don't need him." "No one but you and Emily knows he was there," Ivy replied. "The key is making your story resonate." Ivy squeezed Ryan's shoulder as they drove. "That was incredible, Ryan. You really got into it. Can we not talk right now?" Ryan replied, his voice raw with emotion. Ivy pulled her hand back, sensing his need for silence. By the time they reached the Bennett building, she had made up her mind. "Park in the lot," she said. "You're coming with me." She led him to her office, motioned for him to sit on the futon, and returned with 2 bottles of beer. They drank quietly. After finishing his second bottle, Ryan broke the silence. "Yeah, I felt it all come back, the shock, confusion, despair. I guess I never really dealt with it, he admitted. Ivy nodded. I'm sorry to make you relive it, but your reaction is exactly what we need to connect with the audience. He frowned. I still don't understand how this will help. I'll use the video to set up your decline, Ivy explained. Then, we'll build toward a satisfying comeback. It's all about creating a compelling arc. So, you're promising me blood, sweat, and tears? Ryan asked with a weak smile. Exactly. But remember, the British lost in the end because America helped, Ivy quipped. And you're America in this scenario? Ryan joked. Ivy grinned. With me on your side, it won't be a fair fight. She stood, stretching. Let me get back to work. This video needs some editing. Ryan rose too. Ivy, I don't know why, but I trust you. Thanks for the beer. She hugged him quickly. Hang in there, Ryan. Things will get better, I promise. On the drive back to his motel, Ryan felt a small glimmer of hope amid his exhaustion. The next morning, Ryan's mood took a nosedive. Helen Sanders was out, leaving the office in chaos. Work dragged until Ivy called. Can you stop by after work? I've got something to show you, she said. Ryan agreed, and the last 2 hours of the day passed more quickly. At Ivy's office, she greeted him with a grin. Sit down, she said, motioning to a chair. Before I show you, you need some context. Ever heard of Gossip Girl Gertie's back fence? No. Should I have? Ryan asked. Absolutely, Ivy said, pulling up a video. An ad played before switching to a backyard with a white picket fence. A sign read Gossip Girl Gertie's back fence, transitioning to a set with a desk and the same fence. Behind it, a hostess wearing a 1950s-style blonde wig beamed at the camera. Oh, how nice to see you, she chirped. I'm Gertie, the Gossip Girl, with all the juiciest stories. The show moved through gossip, product recommendations, and quirky anecdotes, accompanied by charts and clips. After a few minutes, Ivy paused the video. What do you think? She asked. Is this her hobby? Ryan asked, confused. Ivy laughed. A hobby? It's her full-time job. She makes a living off YouTube. Really? How much? A channel with 1 million subscribers can make over $50,000 a year, Ivy explained. Not bad, Ryan replied. Gertie's channel had 100 million subscribers last year, Ivy added. Ryan's jaw dropped. So, she's making $5 million a year? Exactly, Ivy said. To stay successful, she needs constant content. That's where I come in. I pitch stories she can use. And you think she'll want my story? Ryan asked doubtfully. Ivy grinned. Absolutely. I'll make you the poster boy for every heartless man who abandoned his wife or girlfriend. That's not true. I didn't abandon anyone. Ryan protested. Not in real life, but in the narrative, Ivy replied. She clicked on a video file and played footage of Ryan arriving at his house. How many of you have been dumped by a boyfriend or kicked out by an insensitive husband? Ivy read from her script. In Sacramento, a wife changed the locks and left him out in the cold. The video showed Ryan pounding on the door, looking distraught. Watch his face. He's in shock. Then see how he deflates when the bailiff hands him the divorce papers. And finally, the walk of shame back to his car, Ivy continued. Ryan watched, mortified. That was humiliating. Do we have to do it this way? I'm sorry, Ryan, but this is how we get attention, Ivy said firmly. At least you didn't use my name. I just hope no one recognizes me, Ryan said, resigned. Ivy turned back to her computer, already engrossed in her work. The following day at work, Ryan received a message from Ivy. You're live on Gertie. Fasten your seatbelt. Ryan spent the afternoon distracted, but his co-workers didn't seem to notice anything unusual. Even Helen Sanders' glance as he left at 5:30 p.m. was routine. Unable to wait, Ryan stopped by Ivy's office. Gertie loved it, Ivy said, beaming. She used the footage just like you saw, but added her voiceover. It's getting an incredible response. Women love seeing an insensitive man get what's coming to him. But I'm not like that. Ryan protested. They don't know that, Ivy replied with a shrug. It's spreading fast. Someone shared your face on TikTok, and now it's viral. My Facebook accounts are blowing up, too. So, I've got a nickname now? Ryan asked sarcastically. Ivy smirked. They're calling you humiliated husband. Catchy, huh? Ryan groaned. Perfect. So what's next? Ryan asked. We let this simmer for another day, then move to phase 2, Ivy explained. What's phase 2? We make you into a full-fledged villain, she replied. Does it have to be? Ryan asked, uneasy. Absolutely. You can't rise unless you fall first, Ivy insisted. I don't think Newton said that, Ryan remarked dryly. Yes, but Sir Isaac didn't know about the internet, Ivy quipped. Ryan spent the evening in a somber mood, tossing and turning in his cramped motel bed. The next morning, he overslept and had to rush to work. As he entered the lobby, he noticed the receptionist staring at him and making a phone call as he passed. What's that about? He wondered as he settled into his cubicle. Throughout the morning, an unusual number of co-workers passed by his desk, snickering and making muffled remarks. Just before lunch, a supervisor stormed in. Ryan, this internet nonsense is affecting your work. It's unprofessional to air your personal issues like this, she scolded. Ma'am, I'm just working on the Wilson case. I'll have the file ready by 2 p.m., Ryan replied defensively. Email it to me. Judging by the way you're moving, it'll take an hour otherwise, she snapped before leaving. Ryan slumped in his chair, anxiety mounting. If even Helen has seen it, this must be everywhere. Hoping to stay under the radar, Ryan avoided interactions, but it didn't help. During a restroom break, a group of co-workers gathered in the hallway. A nervous intern approached him. Mr. Carter, some people want to know if your initials are HH, the intern asked hesitantly. Ryan froze as the group erupted into laughter. Embarrassed, he ducked into the restroom for refuge. By 5 p.m., he couldn't take it anymore. He dashed out of the office and drove to the Bennett building, bursting into Ivy's office. What did you do to me? Ryan demanded. Everyone knows it's me, even my boss. I'm not surprised, Ivy replied calmly. Ryan, you've become a meme. A what? He asked, bewildered. A meme. That clip of you walking away humiliated went viral. You're now the poster boy for a man humiliated by a woman, she explained. Ryan sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. Ivy knelt in front of him. Ryan, this will get worse. Tomorrow, Gertie will reveal you were served with a restraining order. Can you hold on? I'll try, Ryan muttered. I don't have much of a choice. The next day, Logan Spencer parked his silver BMW in Ryan's driveway. Inside, Emily frowned at her computer. Did you see this? She asked, pointing to Gertie's video. How did they get that tape? Probably one of your neighbors filmed it. It makes Ryan look like an idiot, and you look smart for dumping him, Logan said with a smirk. I guess you're right, but I feel sorry for him. Look at his face, Emily said, her voice softening. Ryan's day started off better. People still stared, but the novelty seemed to be wearing off. That changed mid-morning when he received a text from Ivy. The second part of Gertie's video is live. Stay cool. Curious and dreading what he'd see, Ryan logged onto YouTube. His stomach dropped as the video began. In the clip, Gertie revealed the restraining order, showing the official document on screen and speculating about its implications. To the wife, we hope you're safe. To the humiliated hubby, goodbye. And we hope you get what you deserve, Gertie declared with a dramatic flair. Ryan felt his world crumble as the video painted him as a villain. Oh my God, Ryan whispered to himself. Gertie might as well put a bounty on my head. The office, usually a hum of activity, now felt tense and hostile. Co-workers whispered and cast accusatory glances as Ryan walked by. Near lunch, Helen Sanders stormed into his cubicle. Mr. Carter, your unprofessional behavior is impacting the company, she began coldly. Normally, your personal life is your business. But when it involves spousal misuse, it's another matter entirely. I never touched Emily, Ryan exclaimed. Then why did she seek legal recourse? Why must you stay 200 yards away from her? Helen pressed. I don't know why, Ryan stammered, desperation in his voice. Enough, Helen shouted. This company has zero tolerance for spousal misuse. You are hereby terminated, effective immediately. Ryan's jaw dropped, but Helen continued. You'll be paid for your work and receive 2 weeks severance. Ralph will escort you out. A stout security guard appeared. We won't have any problems, will we? Ralph asked. Ryan shook his head and allowed the guard to lead him out. Behind him, the murmurs of co-workers grew louder. In his car, Ryan sat motionless until Ralph gestured for him to leave the lot. Numb, he drove aimlessly until he found himself outside the Bennett building. Bursting into Ivy's office, Ryan shouted, "What did you do to me? I've been going through hell all day. Everyone knows it's me, even my boss. I got fired." "They fired you? Why?" Ivy asked, her concern genuine. "Helen Sanders fired me. I'm getting severance, but still—" Ryan trailed off, his frustration clear. "That's great," Ivy exclaimed. "Don't go anywhere, Ryan. I'll be right back." Before Ryan could protest, Ivy dashed out of the room, leaving him puzzled. Exhausted, he collapsed onto the futon. Half asleep, he woke to Ivy returning and sitting beside him. "I'm so sorry, Ryan," she said, taking his hands. "I knew Phase 2 would be tough, but I didn't expect your company to act so fast." "It was awful," Ryan muttered. "What's next?" "Now we let things settle for a day," Ivy explained, "and then we start Phase 3. "Oh God," Ryan groaned. "What's Phase 3? Ivy smiled softly. "Now, your arc starts to climb. You've hit rock bottom, Ryan," Ivy said, "but it's all uphill from here. Uncle Victor told me to remind you, don't cash any checks from your firm." "You talked to your uncle about this?" Ryan asked, surprised. "Of course. He insisted. Don't sign anything without his approval," Ivy replied firmly. "But I'm running out of money," Ryan admitted. "Paying for the motel, eating out, buying clothes, it's all adding up." Ivy brightened. "You could move here, live in your office?" Ryan asked incredulously. "Yes, I live here. There's a converted bedroom and a bathroom," Ivy explained. "But where would I sleep?" Ryan hesitated. "On the futon, at least until we sort things out." Seeing his doubt, she squeezed his hands. "It's silly to waste money on a motel. You'll be here most of the time anyway." Ryan sighed. "Let's talk about it over dinner." They went to a small bistro, where Ryan vented about his day. Ivy listened attentively, offering support and reassurance. After dinner, she insisted on paying. Back in the car, Ivy said, "Why don't we stop by your motel, grab your stuff, and check out? I'll drive you back to the office." Too tired to argue, Ryan agreed. They collected his belongings and returned downtown. Ivy helped him set up the futon as a makeshift bed. She reappeared wearing a long t-shirt with video game characters. "Everything you need?" she asked. Ryan nodded. "Thanks for this. I'm glad to be here instead of that motel." She smiled warmly. "Me too, Ryan." As the lights dimmed, Ryan lay in the semi-darkness, surrounded by glowing computer screens and LED lights. A wave of depression washed over him. What happened to my life? I've lost my marriage, my house, my job, and my friends. Now I'm sleeping on a futon in someone else's office. He pondered where it all went wrong until he finally drifted into a restless sleep. The next morning, Ivy greeted him with coffee and sweet rolls. Though still melancholy, Ryan distracted himself by searching social media for mentions of humiliated hubby. He was stunned by the results: tweets, TikToks, Instagram posts, Facebook links, and even a Wikipedia entry. "I spent most of yesterday posting images, comments, and links to spread your story," Ivy admitted. "But it took off on its own. You're everywhere, Ryan. People are even talking about you in other languages." "Great," Ryan muttered sarcastically. "Now I'm infamous worldwide." His mood darkened further when he saw hateful comments, some even encouraging him to harm himself. "I might need a bodyguard before this is over," he groaned. Ivy tried to reassure him. "The farther you fall now, the higher you'll bounce back." "I hope you're right," Ryan replied. "Because right now, I feel like I'm dropping like a stone." Meanwhile, Emily was scrolling through comments about Ryan on Gertie's site. Worried, she called Logan. "This is getting out of hand. I wanted to move on, not destroy him. He's never done anything like what they're accusing him of. Should I say something?" No, Logan replied sharply. Let it develop. This publicity will make the divorce smoother and probably get you a better settlement. When we go public, people will support you. You really think so? Emily asked, uncertain. Absolutely. Ryan has a target on his back, and people want to take shots at him. He'll never recover, Logan assured her. After lunch, Ivy received a call from Gertie, which she put on speaker for Ryan to hear. Hi, Gertie. Did you like the latest on the humiliated hubby? Ivy asked, winking at Ryan. It blew up. Best story you've ever sent me. I got 50,000 new subscribers from it. Got anything else? Gertie asked excitedly. Perfect timing, Ivy said. I'm putting together more material. It'll be ready by the end of the day. What have you got? Gertie pressed eagerly. What if the humiliated hubby isn't such a bad guy after all? Ivy suggested. Are you kidding? That's amazing. Gertie exclaimed. Let's make it a two-parter. Send both episodes to me ASAP. After the call, Ivy turned to Ryan. Feeling better? It's good Gertie liked it, but I need to see how the audience reacts, Ryan replied with a small smile. I'm starting to feel a little more hopeful. Ivy worked late into the evening, fine-tuning the new material. Ryan monitored social media but mostly stayed out of her way. When she was finally satisfied, she uploaded everything to Gertie and leaned back with a thumbs up. How about we order pizza? Ivy suggested. I've got beer in the fridge. Let's relax. Sounds good, Ryan agreed. Over pizza and beer, they chatted. How did you and Gertie become such good friends? Ryan asked. We met as freshmen at Caltech, Ivy explained. Caltech? I wouldn't have guessed she once wanted to be an engineer, Ryan said, surprised. What about you? I majored in computer science but never finished, Ivy replied, brushing past the subject. Ryan sensed her reluctance and shifted gears. Where did you get the nickname Ivy? Did you run track or something? She grinned. Actually, Ivy is short for Ivial, from Ivial Hammett. My dad loves detective novels like The Maltese Falcon. What about Morgan? Ryan asked curiously. Ivy's smile faded. That's my ex-husband's last name. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to bring up bad memories. It's fine, Ivy said, looking away. In college, I was a rebellious girl from Sacramento. Joey, my ex, was a bad boy. We ran away together, and my dad helped us get an apartment in Pasadena. But Joey wasted the money on pills and another woman. It all fell apart when he left me for her. That must have been tough, Ryan said, noticing the pain in her expression. It was, Ivy admitted. I ended up on the streets until my dad found me and brought me home. It took time, but I rebuilt my life. I kept Joey's last name as a reminder of what I survived. Ryan nodded, realizing how much she had endured. You're tougher than you look, Ivy. She smiled faintly. You're tougher than you think, Ryan. Trust me. If I had to do it over, I'd go back to Bennett, Ivy said thoughtfully. But I'm used to Morgan now. That must have been so painful, Ryan said sympathetically. Yeah, but it's made me stronger. I understand what you're going through, Ivy replied. On impulse, Ryan hugged her, and she hugged him back. Well, aren't we a pair? She said with a sad laugh. The next day, Ryan and Ivy sat in front of her large monitor, waiting for the latest episode of Gertie's Gossip Girl. Ryan fidgeted impatiently, but Ivy reassured him it would be worth the wait. When the episode began, Gertie was practically glowing with excitement. I have big news, gossip lovers, she announced. The saga of the humiliated hubby has a new twist. The screen displayed an image of Ryan's house, with footage of a silver BMW pulling into the garage. Guess whose car this is? Gertie teased. Logan Spencer, head of the Spencer Agency, visiting Mrs. Hubby 3 months before the divorce filing. Clips showed the sports car repeatedly arriving at the house. I'm not judging Mrs. Hubby, Gertie added, but there's clearly more to this story. Stay tuned for the next revelation. Ivy turned off the program, and both she and Ryan jumped up, applauding. Ryan hugged her tightly. That was incredible. You're incredible, he said, staring at her. Unable to stop himself, he leaned in for a kiss. Ivy hesitated, but then responded with equal fervor. Their moment was interrupted by a knock at the door. Victor Bennett, secretary, peeked in. Sorry to interrupt. Mr. Bennett wants to see you, Mr. Carter. Of course, Ryan replied, casting one last glance at Ivy before following the secretary. Victor Bennett greeted Ryan and led him into his office. Since you chose our firm, I've taken a particular interest in your situation, Victor began. I understand you were dismissed from your firm for violating their spousal misuse policy? Yes, sir. My former boss made that very clear, Ryan confirmed. Good. That could strengthen our case, Victor said, nodding. Did they follow proper company procedure before firing you? Not at all, Ryan replied. I can give you at least half a dozen names to confirm that. Perfect, Victor said. Assuming that's true, I've prepared a wrongful termination lawsuit. Your public firing slandered your name, and their lack of process is a significant liability. I believe you have a strong case for $10 million in damages. $10 million? Ryan asked, stunned. Yes, though it could take 3 to 5 years in court, Victor warned. Ryan's excitement faltered. That's a long time. It won't come to that, Victor assured him. They'll want to avoid bad publicity, especially with your growing popularity. I think we can settle out of court for about half, plus legal fees. $5 million? Ryan said, his jaw dropping. Yes, that would be fine. Victor smiled. I hoped you'd think so. Sign here, and I'll start the process. After Ryan signed, he asked hesitantly, will this affect my divorce? I don't want Emily to benefit. It shouldn't. These events occurred after the divorce petition. Her actions led to your dismissal, not the other way around, Victor assured him. Feeling jubilant, Ryan hurried back to Ivy's office. She was focused on her keyboard, typing furiously. Ivy, I have incredible news. Ryan began. Can it wait, Ryan? I'm on a deadline, Ivy interrupted, not looking up. Disappointed, Ryan muttered. I think I'll go for a walk, and left without a reply. Ryan wandered to the Capitol Mall, eventually stopping at the Tower Bridge to gaze at the Sacramento River. I shouldn't have kissed her. She probably thinks I'm a fool. But she kissed me back. Maybe it was just pity. He sighed and shook his head. Returning to the Bennett building, he found Ivy still engrossed in her work. Her distant demeanor only deepened his uncertainty. Meanwhile, Emily angrily called Logan Spencer. Have you seen that gossip show on YouTube? How did they get video of you in my garage? Logan sighed. Probably one of those video doorbells. They store footage for months. I'd like to know who found it. Do you think Ryan is behind this? Emily asked nervously. Ryan? Are you kidding? He's the humiliated husband. Why would he sabotage himself? Logan countered. I don't know, Emily said, frustrated. But it must be someone. Yeah, and if I ever find out who, they'll regret it, Logan growled. This whole thing has ruined our plans. Emily softened her tone. You know what would make me feel better? Come over tonight. I don't think that's a good idea, Logan hesitated. I don't want to end up in another video. Come after dark. Turn off your headlights before the driveway. It'll be safe, she coaxed. Reluctantly, Logan agreed. Later, he entered through the garage, and Emily emerged from her bedroom dressed in black, holding pruning shears. You kept me waiting, she said accusingly. I'm sorry, Logan pleaded. I couldn't help it. You know what to do. Go to the bedroom, she commanded. Yes, mistress, Logan replied, hurrying to obey. The next day, Ryan and Ivy avoided discussing their kiss. By the evening, Ivy was animated as they prepared to watch Gertie's latest installment. Come on, Ryan, she said, beckoning him to the large monitor. This one's going to be big. Ryan couldn't help but smile. Despite the chaos, he felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in weeks. After the usual introduction, Gertie appeared, her excitement palpable. The humiliated husband saga continues, she announced. Last time, I revealed that Emily, his unfaithful wife, an image of Emily appeared on screen, was having an affair with advertising executive Logan Spencer. Could this be why she kicked her helpless hubby out? The screen changed to show police records. And look at this. No convictions, no complaints. Odd. Could Mrs. Hubby just want to humiliate him further? Gertie leaned forward conspiratorially. But why did Judge Marcus Collins issue a restraining order? An ad for Judge Collins' campaign flashed on the screen. 3 weeks before the order, the judge received a $10,000 campaign contribution from Spencer Advertising Agency. A donor list appeared, the contribution circled in red. "I'm not saying the judge acted because of the donation," Gertie said with a sly smile. "Draw your own conclusions. But I think we owe the humiliated hubby an apology." Ivy turned off the video. Ryan sat stunned, then broke into a grin. "Wow. Just wow. That should give Emily and her boyfriend something to think about." He reached out to hug Ivy but stopped short. "Ivy, you're a genius. That was incredible." "Thanks," she replied, smiling. "But the real question is how the internet will react. Why don't you grab us some lunch? By the time you get back, we'll have feedback." When Ryan returned with a deli bag, Ivy waved him over excitedly. "Look at this," she said, pointing to her monitor. The screen was filled with comments, emoticons, and GIFs. "What's all that?" Ryan asked. "This is the #HumiliatedHubby Twitter feed," Ivy explained. Gertie's episode sparked a flurry of reactions. And that's just one platform. The show is blowing up on YouTube, Instagram, and everywhere else. People are taking sides, Hubby's team versus Mrs. Hubby's team. "What's the split?" Ryan asked nervously. "About 70% for Team Hubby, 30% for Team Emily," Ivy replied. "Wait, 30% are on her side?" Ryan exclaimed. Ivy shrugged. "You'll always have crazies. What matters is you've gone from zero to hero for most people." Ryan shook his head in amazement. "You were right. This storyline is working. You're incredible." He stepped closer to her, but Ivy pulled away slightly. "Listen, Ryan, about what happened between us the other day," she began. "Oh, that?" Ryan shifted uncomfortably. "I think we need to cool down a little. I know we're sort of living together, but I don't know if I'm ready for anything." Ivy hesitated but nodded. "It's okay, Ryan. I get it. I mean it. I got caught up in the moment," he added. Before the conversation could continue, Ryan's phone rang. It was Helen Sanders. "Ryan, I'm glad I caught you," she said pleasantly. "Can you come to the office? I have important information for you." "I don't know, Helen. We didn't part on great terms," Ryan replied warily. "I understand, and I'm sorry about that. But something's come up that you'll want to know about." "It'll be worth your time, I promise," Helen insisted. After a moment's hesitation, and feeling awkward about lingering with Ivy, Ryan agreed. When Ryan arrived at his old office building, the receptionist greeted him warmly and even asked for an autograph. Staff peeked out from cubicles like prairie dogs as Helen led him to her office. "Let me get straight to the point, Ryan," she began. "Last time we spoke, things were said that I regret. Your work was always excellent, and we've missed you. We'd like to offer you your job back." Ryan raised an eyebrow, saying nothing. "Not just your old job," Helen continued hastily, "but a promotion to director, with a 15% raise. You can keep the severance pay as a signing bonus. What do you say?" Ryan leaned forward. "So you admit I was fired for spousal misuse, which I didn't commit, and that my termination didn't follow company policy?" Helen waved dismissively. "That's all water under the bridge. Let's focus on the future, your promotion, pay raise, and bonus plan." Ryan stood. "Helen, you can take the raise, the bonus, and the new title and shove it. I'll see you and the firm in court." As he exited, scattered applause broke out from some cubicles. After lunch, Victor Bennett called to check in. "Tell me you didn't make any commitments or sign anything," Victor said. Ryan repeated what Helen had offered. "It wasn't prudent to go without a lawyer," Victor scolded gently. "But their desperate offer is a good sign. Expect to hear from their legal team soon." Back at the office, Ivy and Ryan ordered Thai food. Over dinner, Ryan recounted his encounter with Helen but omitted details of the lawsuit, not wanting to seem boastful. "After everything you've been through, you deserve some good luck," Ivy said sincerely. The conversation paused, and Ryan noticed Ivy looking at him thoughtfully. "What's on your mind, Ivy?" he asked. She hesitated. "You asked me about my past. Can I ask about yours?" "Sure," Ryan replied. "How did you and Emily end up together?" Ivy asked. Ryan rolled his eyes. "We met at a Chamber of Commerce event. Hit it off immediately, talked all night, and got married 6 months later." "And you didn't know her that well?" Ivy asked, incredulous. I thought I did, Ryan admitted. She told me she was divorced, and I believed her ex was an idiot. She wanted to elope, so we got married right after her divorce was finalized. Ivy nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. Sounds complicated. Yeah, Ryan said quietly. More than I realized. It all seemed exciting and romantic at the time, Ryan explained. Ivy sat quietly, processing what he had shared. I was just curious how you two ended up together. She stood, stretching and yawning. I'm really tired. I think I'll head to bed early. See you in the morning, Ryan. He watched her door close and muttered to himself, What's this all about? The next morning, Ryan's phone rang early. Mr. Carter, a woman's voice said, This is Victor Bennett office. Mr. Bennett would like to meet with you this morning. Sure, I can be there in about an hour, Ryan replied. Knocking on Ivy's door, he found her already dressed. Good morning, Ryan. Who was on the phone? Your uncle's secretary. He wants to see me. Can I use your shower? I think he'd appreciate it, Ryan said with a grin. Ivy waved him off, smirking. After he showered, shaved, and dressed, he found Ivy waiting with coffee and croissants. You need caffeine and carbs for a proper breakfast, she teased. At Victor's office, the receptionist greeted Ryan warmly. He's expecting you, she said with a smile. Victor looked serious as Ryan sat down. I've been negotiating with your former employer, Victor began. We couldn't agree on the $5 million settlement we discussed. Ryan's heart sank. A hint of a smile appeared on Victor's face. However, I secured $6.5 million. I hope that's satisfactory. $6.5 million? You're kidding, Ryan exclaimed. They'll cover my fees as well. The only condition is a non-disclosure agreement. No public comments about the deal. Is that acceptable? Victor asked. For $6.5 million, I'll gladly stay silent, Ryan replied, grinning. Victor raised a hand. Remember, the IRS and state taxes will take their share. You'll get about half. $3.5 million is more than I expected. I'm not complaining, Ryan said. Good. And don't share this information, especially with family, Victor reminded him. I never discuss a client's business without their consent, Victor assured him. Returning to Ivy's office, Ryan found her typing away. What did Uncle Victor say? She asked curiously. Do you have plans tonight? Ryan asked nonchalantly. No, why? I'd like to thank you by taking you to dinner. Have you been to the Firehouse restaurant? I'd love to, but the Firehouse is expensive. Are you sure? I've already made reservations. Besides, it's not too expensive for a man about to get a very good settlement, Ryan said with a wink. Realization dawned on Ivy, and she jumped with delight. Oh, Ryan, congratulations. I'm so happy for you. Then she frowned. Tonight? I don't have anything to wear, and I need to get my hair done. No, you don't need to change anything. Your style suits you, Ryan reassured her. She hesitated, then huffed. Damn you, Ryan Carter. I haven't shopped in years. Grabbing her car keys, she added, Stay here. If anyone needs anything, handle it. I'll be back soon. It was dark when Ivy returned, arms laden with shopping bags. She disappeared into her room, and Ryan decided to dress as well, putting on the one suit he had salvaged from his house. Ryan, what do you think? Ivy asked behind him. He turned to see her in an ankle-length black halter dress. Ivy, is that you? He asked, stunned. Her face fell. You don't like it? No, no. He rushed over. You look amazing, like a model. I've just never seen you in such an elegant dress. Relieved, she smiled. I was afraid it was too much, but it looked so good in the store. It's perfect, Ryan said, stepping back to admire her. The black dress contrasted beautifully with her hair, and her silver high-heeled sandals completed the look. You look so tall, and that dress really suits you. He glanced at his suit and added, Now I'm wondering if I look good enough to go with you. Ivy laughed, kissed his cheek, and said, I would have told you if you didn't. Now, call us a cab. Over dinner on the Firehouse's brick-lined terrace, Ivy sipped her wine and grew serious. Ryan, about the other day, when I pulled away, she began. His smile faded. I remember. But that was my fault. No, it wasn't, Ivy said, looking down at the table. It was me. Remember when I told you about my marriage? It really hurt me, and I haven't dated since then. I'm sorry, Ivy. I didn't mean to pressure you, Ryan said sincerely. You didn't, Ivy replied. I just reacted instinctively. When I first met you, I thought you were just another clueless husband. But now, I see you're wise, funny, romantic, and loyal. That's important to me. She blushed. If you wanted to kiss me again, I wouldn't run away. Ryan smiled triumphantly and took her hand. Before he could speak, a waiter approached. I think we'll skip dessert, Ryan said with a grin. Ivy blushed. Meanwhile, Emily angrily tried to contact Logan Spencer. What's this about bribing Judge Collins for a restraining order? I thought you said he was your friend, she demanded. In politics, friend means sponsor, Logan snapped. The judge needed a gesture to help. Now the agency directors have kicked me out, and the California Department of Revenue is auditing us. I'm screwed. Oh, Logan, I'm so sorry, Emily said softly. Your sorry is worthless. Forget my number while I fix this nightmare, he growled, hanging up. Emily stared at her phone, despair creeping in. What am I going to do now? She moaned. Ryan and Ivy, engrossed in each other, barely noticed the rideshare driver as they arrived at the Bennett building. They hurried to the elevator, hugging tightly as they ascended to the 6th floor. Inside Ivy's office apartment, she turned to Ryan and said, Wait here. I'll be just a minute, before slipping into her bedroom. When Ryan entered, he found the room softly lit by candles. Ivy stood bathed in their glow, looking radiant. They shared an unforgettable night. The next morning, Ryan woke early and lay quietly, reflecting on the whirlwind of recent events. He got up to avoid waking Ivy. When he returned, she was already dressed, looking apprehensive. What's the matter, Ryan? Where did you go? She asked. I needed a walk to think, he said. What were you thinking about? She asked, trying to hide her concern. Ryan sat across from her, his expression serious. Losing my marriage, home, and job has made me question everything, what I want and where I want to live. I'm not from Sacramento. My dad was in the Army, and I grew up in Colorado Springs. We moved here because my mom had relatives in California. Now that my parents are gone, I don't have ties to this city. He showed her his phone. My realtor says there's an offer on the house coming soon. Thanks to your uncle, I have financial breathing room. Once the divorce is finalized, I'll be done with Emily and with Sacramento. It's not a bad place, but it's nothing special to me. Ivy nodded, but Ryan noticed her expression dim. I've been thinking, he continued, and I want a fresh start somewhere else, maybe the Pacific Northwest. It's supposed to be beautiful. He hesitated. I'm sorry, Ivy. What I mean is, would you consider coming with me? Ivy, bracing for rejection, was momentarily stunned. You want me to come with you? For how long? As long as you want, Ryan replied. How long do you want me to stay? She asked. I don't want you to ever leave, Ryan confessed. She gasped and threw her arms around him. After a long embrace, Ryan pulled back slightly. I know it's a lot to ask, he said, leaving your family and job, especially since we're still getting to know each other. Shut up, Ivy interrupted with a smile. Your problem, Ryan, is not understanding when someone says yes. She kissed him deeply, leaving no room for doubt. In the following days, Ryan and Ivy were almost inseparable. Their relationship shift became the talk of the office, amusing the ladies and earning eye rolls from the Bennett brothers. Reality soon intervened. Ryan met with Victor to finalize his divorce. Emily became uncharacteristically cooperative, allowing the proceedings to move forward smoothly. Ryan also entrusted Victor with managing the sale of his house and the settlement with his former employer, keeping the details private for now. Ivy had been juggling her work for clients, primarily her father. When she informed him of her plans to leave Sacramento with Ryan, she braced for his disapproval. Ivy, are you sure? I remember what happened with Joey. I don't want you to get hurt again, her father said. She tensed, expecting a confrontation. It's different now, Dad. I'm older and Ryan is nothing like Joey. No impulsiveness, no wandering eye, no drinking problem. I know, he said, surprising her. I checked. You checked on him? Ivy asked, incredulous. I almost lost you once. I'm not taking that risk again, he said firmly. Everything I found matches what you've told me. He's reliable, intelligent, and hardworking. He was a faithful husband, just naive about Emily. You've chosen well. Oh, Papa, she exclaimed, hugging him tightly. As she returned to her chair, he added, I'm glad you won't have financial problems, but I'd hate to see you close your business. You're good at it, and I rely on you more than you know. Ivy laughed. Leaving with Ryan doesn't mean I'll stop working. I can run my business from anywhere with a laptop and high-speed internet. You're not getting rid of me that easily. I'm very glad to hear that, her father said warmly. Then his expression turned serious. There's something else you both need to know. Ryan should join us. Ivy fetched Ryan, and they returned to her father's office. Victor leaned against his desk, arms crossed. I've learned some news that may affect you both, Victor began. Logan Spencer, your ex-wife's lover, has been ousted from his agency and is under investigation for tax fraud. Ryan shrugged. I'm not shedding any tears for him. That's not all, Victor continued. He and Emily are no longer dating and aren't speaking to each other. Ryan and Ivy exchanged a glance. Okay, Ryan said cautiously. Why the big fuss? Ivy asked. It's not about what happened. It's about what might happen next, Victor explained. Ryan, your ex's scheme failed. She has no new prospects, romantically or professionally. I think she'll try to reconcile with you. Ivy sighed. Good luck with that. Ryan waved dismissively. I wouldn't touch her with a 10-foot pole. I understand, Victor said, but don't underestimate her. She could delay the divorce, block the house sale, or petition for family counseling. But why would she do that? Ryan asked, his tone sharp. To keep living in the house and buy time to win you back. If she learns about your financial settlement, she might demand a share in exchange for finalizing the divorce, Victor explained. Ryan scowled. She can try, but she won't get far. We'll ensure that, but stay vigilant, Victor advised. Ivy took Ryan's hand, giving him a reassuring squeeze. We've come this far. We'll handle whatever she throws our way. Ryan nodded, determined. Let her try. I'm ready for it. What a nightmare, Ryan exclaimed, pacing the room. You don't know the half of it, Victor said grimly. Let me tell you what else I've found. Ryan and Ivy listened intently, their expressions growing more shocked as Victor revealed the latest information. Ryan's face turned pale with anger, while Ivy watched him nervously. What are you going to do, Ryan? She asked hesitantly. I'd like to strangle her, he replied bluntly, then quickly added, Don't worry, babe, I'd never do that. But I do want to pay her back somehow. Ivy's expression softened as an idea struck her. I know someone who can help. Ryan raised an eyebrow before grinning. Gertie. They both laughed, and Ivy immediately messaged the YouTube personality. Within seconds, her phone buzzed with a reply. I want it. I want it. I want it. Let's get to work, Ivy said. For the next couple of hours, they collaborated, turning the new information into content for Gertie's next video. Later, Ryan's phone rang. Ivy saw the caller ID and noticed the anger flash across his face. She excused herself to the bedroom to give him privacy, but could still hear the tension in his voice. When he joined her after the call, his expression was grim. It was Emily, he said. She wants to meet tomorrow at our house to settle some details. She hinted at wanting to reconcile. Ivy frowned. And you told her? That I'd get back to her, Ryan replied. The question now is how quickly we can get this information to Gertie and when she can air it. If we send it tonight, she might have time to prepare it for release by tomorrow. Ivy nodded. Let's do it. Great, Ryan said. I'll call Emily and tell her I can meet in the afternoon. Hopefully, that'll give Gertie plenty of time. Judging by Ivy's grin when she picked up her phone, Gertie's enthusiasm wasn't a problem. The next afternoon, Emily was nervously checking herself in the mirror when Ryan arrived. Seeing him step out of the rideshare, she thought, worst case, I'll drive him back to his apartment. Best case, he stays the night. She opened the door before he could knock, leaning in as if to kiss him, but Ryan stepped back. Don't rush, she scolded herself, gesturing him into the living room. Do you have the papers we need to sign? Ryan asked. I do, Emily said, laying them on the coffee table. But before we get to that, I need to apologize. Ryan sat silently as she continued. I've made terrible mistakes and treated you horribly. This whole divorce has been like waking up from a bad dream. I don't know what I was thinking. I was selfish and cruel, and I can't even explain why. All I know is that I want to make it up to you. Ryan opened his mouth to speak, but she pressed on. The thought of selling the house made me realize how much we've lost. We had so many happy times here, full of hope and love. Now I can't bear to let that go. She leaned closer, a tear glistening in her eye. Ryan, is there any way we can get that feeling back? Can't we start over? We don't have to sell the house. If you're willing to try, I'd spend the rest of my life making you as happy as you deserve. Ryan stared at her coldly. Let me get this straight, Emily. You want me to forgive you for cheating, forget the restraining order, and forget locking me out of my own home? Emily flinched but nodded. I know I hurt you, Ryan. I don't know what came over me. It's like I was temporarily insane. But I've come to my senses. Please, let's not throw away the good with the bad. Ryan's voice grew sharp. Are you out of your mind? Let me make something clear. I'm an accountant. I deal with assets and liabilities. And you, Emily, are a huge liability. The sooner I'm rid of you, the happier I'll be. Emily gasped as Ryan stood. Now, if you'll give me the papers, I'll sign and leave. Hopefully for the last time. Shocked, Emily handed him the real estate documents. He signed quickly and headed to the door. Before she could muster another plea, he turned with a grim smile. Have you ever heard of gossipy Gertie? He asked. Emily shuddered. You should watch her latest episode. I think you'll find it illuminating. With that, Ryan left and climbed into the waiting car. Everything okay? Ivy asked. Ryan smiled. Everything's fine. As they drove off, Emily rushed to her computer, logging into YouTube and finding Gertie's channel. On the screen, Gertie greeted her audience. Hey, gossipers. Ready for the next chapter of the humiliated hubby saga? Turns out, Mrs. Hubby wasn't seeking a divorce because of spousal misuse. Oh no, she wanted out to have an affair. And get this, her lover bribed a judge to issue a protective order to make her husband look bad. Chilling, right? But there's more. Emily's jaw dropped as Gertie revealed a pattern of cons, labeling her Mrs. Machiavelli. She's done this before, marrying, divorcing, and draining her husbands dry. But this time, her scheme failed. Husband number 5? He's off into the sunset with someone special, no longer humiliated. And Mrs. Machiavelli? Let's just say there are some angry ex-husbands who want a word with her. Emily slammed her laptop shut just as her phone rang. Seeing it was a friend, she reluctantly answered. Hi, Emily. Or should I say Mrs. Machiavelli? With a scream, Emily hurled her phone across the room. I've got to get out of this town, she muttered. As Ryan and Ivy drove down I-5, he glanced at her. How about we take the 101 along the coast? It's scenic and romantic. That sounds perfect, Ivy agreed, squeezing his hand. It'll take longer to get to Seattle, but we're in no rush. We'll need to find work once we're there, Ivy noted. Ryan smiled. I don't think we'll have to worry about that. What do you mean? Oh, Ryan said, blushing. I never told you about the settlement, did I? You said it was good, she replied. $6.5 million, Ryan admitted. Her mouth fell open. What? After taxes, it'll be about half that, Ryan clarified. That's amazing. Why didn't you tell me before? I didn't want you to think I was using the money to win you over, Ryan said. Ivy rolled her eyes. I don't care about the money. My job is managing social media for clients. Your job is to take care of my needs. Think you can handle that? Ryan grinned. I can handle it.